Why, hello, YouTube. This is Baylor Mage again, and today, you may see in the background here, we've been playing an absolute truckload of Last Epoch. This is going to be sort of a build guide, not really a build guide. I don't really know what to call it, because what I did for my first two characters, this is my second character, is I intentionally avoided every single build guide and every single bit of knowledge on the internet entirely. So the build I've come up with was made by just playing it and having an absolute ball. So I do want to just preface this whole video with, I do not know if this is the best way to do it. It probably isn't. What it is incredibly fun. Incredibly fun. And so there's a lot of different options in here. We're going to go through a lot of them, but oh boy, if anybody is watching this video and you haven't given Last Epoch a go yet, in my opinion, as a player, this has become the second best ARPG on the market, basically overnight. The launch of 1.0 for Last Epoch, other than the server problems that happened for a few days, has been absolutely phenomenal. This is probably going to end up, this is ending up in my permanent rotation. I will absolutely be playing more of this, and as of recording this video, I will also start consuming other content and looking stuff up and trying to figure out what's the best and what's fun, and we will probably end up doing a lot more Last Epoch content as well as PoE. Probably with some more knowledge behind it than this one, but a lot of people on stream have been asking me about this build, so we're going to go over it. So let's jump into game and go through some of the mechanics. There we go. All right, so this is my Warlock guy. I have turned this into a one button build. All I do is cast this. That is it. All 5 of my skills proc off just this. This is also a damned stacking damage over time build. So everything I do is just about proccing as many stacks of damned as I can get. You can see I've put transplant, which is the movement ability, on my bar 3 times because I don't need access to any of those abilities. They all proc automatically. I never, ever need to press them. I do have a second sometimes button, which is a little bit relevant. Sometimes, if it's safe to do so, and only if it's safe to do so, I might stand still and manually cast Chaos Bolt, as well as having my Chthonic Fisher down. How do you pronounce that? I don't know. I might have both of those down. So there's technically maybe a second button. It is worth noting, holding this down and standing in place and locking myself into casts only gives me about 20% more single target damage while I'm doing it, so it is really not a huge deal at all. So, how do we do this? Let's start with Chaotic Fisher, or whatever it's called, is the Warlock Mastery, so we do have to be a Warlock. We're also using Chaos Bolts, which is in the Warlock tree. So we will go over the trees here later, but let's first go over the mechanics of how this works. Chthonic Fisher, however that's said. I have too many levels in right now, but we'll get to that. The important bit is this is a damn stacking build. So we take extra spirits. Spirits inflict enemy with 3 stacks of damned. Damned is a necrotic damage over time ability, reduces their regen and stacks an unlimited amount of time, does damage on its own, lasts 2.5 seconds. So we're getting that from here. We're getting our necrotic shred from here. This caps out at 10 anyway, so this is enough for necrotic shred for the entire build. We're taking this node up here. The fishers release spirits more frequently. That's 50%. We're taking this one, which makes the fisher open in both directions. So it's casting 2 fishers instead of 1 forward, 1 backwards. That's why the line is so long. And then this one, which replaces 60% of the spirits with Chaos Bolt. That is all this does. When we're looking at gear later, you will notice I'm level 25. That is absolutely overkill. This node does nothing for the build, and Chaotic Fissure itself isn't a huge form of damage, so pulling 1 out of here and 2 out of here brings you back in line with level 21, which is super easy to get, and you'll almost not be able to even notice because this is not that important. I just happen to have extra levels, so I put them in something. But that brings us over here to Chaos Bolt, which is not just our main damage, but also the skill that procs everything else in the build. So from Chaos Bolt, we get our 100% damage chance, an absolute truckload of additional damage here per if you have Damned, Ignite, Bleeding, and Frostbite. I think I'm missing Frostbite right now, but I have the other 3, so those are all separate more multipliers, so that's insane. Great. I technically have 1 point in Ignite chance here. I absolutely do not need. That is a wasted point. I just couldn't figure out what else to put it in, so it only needs to be level 20. But these points matter. This is a travel node. We come down to here where we get more damage and more hit damage. Hit damage doesn't matter, but the more damage does. Then down here has health gain on hit and mana gain on hit. Super important to get that mana gain on hit. Build is very mana intensive. In fact, everything else we do is to deal with mana as well. So mana intensive, this helps a lot. Everything is cursed all the time. Chaotic Fissure is a curse. There's like 7 other curses in this build. I think it's 5, but tons of curses. So we got that. We do have this node, which I don't know if it really matters. I've spec'd in and out of it a bunch. It's really hard to tell whether it's even working. I think it's working, but you could drop this point and barely even notice, which is just a chance to cast an additional Chaos Bolt. That's great. Over here, curse duration refreshed on hit. This is what makes it so that every single curse we have, all of them, are just 100% uptime. As soon as they're applied, they're just constantly reapplied or refreshed the duration of, as well as some more life gain on hit. Those 2 life gain on hit nodes on their own, already quite a bit of sustain. We have a ton of hits, so that's great. Then Chaos Bolt's hits against cursed enemies. Remember, Chaotic Fissure itself is a curse. Also cast Bone Curse at their location. So that just happens on a 6-second cooldown. You're just bone cursing over and over again. The cooldown doesn't matter because we refresh it permanently. So Bone Curse is up all the time. We've also got Chaos Bolts have a chance per intelligence to cast Rip Blood, but it can only do a maximum of 2 per second. So it's no good for damage, but it is good for utility. We also have Chaos Bolts have a chance per dex to cause you to attack with Harvest from the location of the enemy, hitting all enemies around them. This can only happen 3 times per second. So slightly better, but again, another utility skill. So that's cool. We only have 11 decks. I have played around with gear levels, and I did think it was a little bit better at like 15 to 17-ish decks than it was at 11. But then I also put on some gear that put it at 25, and it was unnoticeably different from about 15. So definitely the 11 that we're always going to have is enough. If you happen to get like 1 all-stat roll or 1 dex roll, I do think it is worth keeping. I currently don't have one, but if you had 1 roll of it somewhere, I think that would be worth keeping. So moving on, what do all our utility skills do? A few options here. We've got Bone Curse, which is the thing that's happening automatically. This is pure utility. We got a bunch of AoE on it. We have it also apply Mark for Death, which is another curse. So that's great. Have Mark for Death last a little longer. That's great. Change it into necrotic damage. Fantastic. Bone Curse is a chance to reduce enemy armor. There's a little bit of armor shred there. It's not really that important. You can definitely pull 3 points out of this. We don't need all of those points. We're mostly a damage over time build. Some armor shred is still good, but armor shred doesn't really affect damage over time at all, so not that important. Definitely need the 2 travel nodes though, because here we get a bunch of armor. If you kill an enemy affected by Bone Curse, you have a chance to gain bone armor for a short duration, which grants armor and less damage taken. Fantastic. Huge. Definitely want it. I've also got 1 point in this so that we can get a little bit of healing out of it. With the extra points, I've gone for a slow whenever we curse with Bone Curse. A little bit of mana efficiency into chill. This is only a 12% chance, but it's fine. Chill is always up. That's enough. Chill reduces their attack caster movement speed, so great. That's automated. All of that is automated. You will see a lot of builds up here for the kill threshold, because that's a cull. We don't need that. We'll get to that soon. Next utility skill, Rip Blood. Rip Blood, this node does nothing, but over here, physical damage to necrotic damage. Again, we're scaling necrotic damage, so at least we can change it to that. More importantly, instead of granting health, it grants ward. And then we just give it a whole bunch of extra healing. And that is the end of what's important. We gave it a whole bunch of extra healing, which is all converted to ward. This is just a ward battery, twice a second. Rip Blood goes off, gives us pretty large chunks of ward. It's great. I have some extra points. I put them in damage and bleed chance. I actually should have maxed the damage first and then the bleed chance. So that's a mistake on my part. I will have that fixed in the planner. But bleed chance is obviously pretty irrelevant. There was just nothing else I could see to do with these nodes. And the utility here was too good to give up. I couldn't find a better thing to replace. That being said, if I was going to replace any skill in this build with something else, it would be Rip Blood. It's good and I'm happy with it, but this is my worst utility. So it would be the one I take out if I had something else I wanted to put in there. Then Harvest. Harvest also super fantastic. Over here, first we have a 12% cull. Anything reaches 12%, it dies automatically. Again, this is all triggered automatically. We never have to cast anything. So killed at 12%, so that's huge. And then this node, which is once every 13 stacks, you gain 10 mana. Now, if Harvest hits 2 mobs, it gives you 2 stacks. If it hits 5 mobs, it gives you 5 stacks. So you can only attack with it automatically procced 3 times a second, but we never have any mana problems on single target anyway. Whenever it's single target, there's always enough curses. We're always getting enough mana on hit from our main stuff that single target we didn't run out anyway. Huge packs we didn't run out. There was always enough mana on hit on huge packs. There's this area in the middle where you've got, you know, 5 mobs to attack there and 8 mobs to attack there and 12 mobs to attack there. And those instances, I was running out of mana all the time before I took this. This fixes that problem. From there, we also have 6 flat ward whenever we hit with it. That's pretty irrelevant, but also 1% of our health gained as ward. So that's all automated as well. I put in 100% area, so it would have better procs on the cull and better procs on the mana back. And I've got my last point in necrotic shred, but that stacks cap at 10 anyway, and I'm already getting 10. So there's 1 extra point there that I really didn't need. I also put 2 in poison chance because I wasn't sure what else to do with those. So we'll see what... I just don't have anything else like useful to put those in. And then this node, which is the last one I just picked up, which is enemies take 5% increased damage. That's just global. Enemies take 5% increased damage. It has some minion stuff in it too, but the minion stuff doesn't matter. Just a 5% global damage buff. So that's great. We press 1 skill. That's how the whole build functions. We press the 1 skill, everything happens. We never have to press any other skills unless we want to stop and lock ourselves in place to cast Chaos Bolt, but I almost never do. I just run around and press this button and it's become a 1 button automated smooth build, and I love it. So we do have the planner here, and in the planner I have set everything out. Now, a few things I want to point out. 1, this unique, not mandatory to start the build, but mandatory if you want to put Harvest in, because it's the only place I'm getting decks. It's also a lot of ward generation, so it's fantastic. I would absolutely target this. It is also like the only unique that's important at all. I would have loved to have got Damned per second as a legendary affix on it. I've failed 6 or 7 helmets so far with 1 LP trying to get damned on it. Didn't work. The next thing is I'm actually not sure what base wand we should be using. I do know that we need the -3 spell cost, and I do know that the ladle doesn't work because it doesn't, damned doesn't scale with spell damage. Damned only scales with necrotic damage and damage over time. However, we do have a lot of curses on, so maybe one of the curse based ones. Realistically, it's the 2 implicits that matter the most. I wanted necrotic damage and damage over time, as high as I could get of those. Necrotic penetration is pretty good. No other suffix really matters. So those were the 2 things I was going for. As far as base wands, I actually just don't know what base wand would be the best. So right now I've got the best affixes that I could get on whatever wand had a -3 spell cost. The other thing that I want to point out about my gear, we're not going to go over every piece of gear, just the important bits. The other thing that I want to point out is right now I have +4 level of Cathartic Fissure. I do not need those 4 levels. We went over that before. The reason I was using that is because it comes with 123% increased damage over time. That's great. Also, the global 103% chance to apply damned is fantastic. I wish that was higher, but more damned always better. However, there is a different mod for chests that I would replace the damage over time with, which is Chaotic Fissures spawn spirits. I think it's up to 50 or 60% faster. That would be better, and it would be better if I had that on a better base. So if you're doing this, you shouldn't be aiming for that +4 level. We should be aiming for the spirit release rate. The reason for that, the main reason for that here, is that our necrotic damage over time, like combined in this build right now, is 1,257. Insanely high number. Losing the 123 off my chest isn't a huge deal. 50% increased cast rate of spirits is basically 30% more damage, because we got the 100% base, we got 50% off the tree. That gives 150. If we could get another 50% on our chest, that's like 33% more damage. So I'm still looking out for that. You should look out for that. I wasn't looking out for it until recently because I misunderstood how unimportant percent damage is. It's very important, but you get so much of it that you don't need much. The other thing is, I wish I was wearing 2 of these rings, but I am not. So I've got one of these, which is sort of okay. I'm using it to crit avoid cap. Otherwise, this is not a perfect setup. This is what I have. So not really a build guide, not really set up in min-maxed positions or anything. I have too much fizz, too much fire, a little too much poison, and a little too much void resists. Necrotic resist being over is perfectly fine. We're super happy with that. And as far as idols go, it's all just chance to damned. I wish they all had chance to damned and less damage taken over time, because damage taken over time is like very, very dangerous in this game. But those are not ones I have. These are the ones I have, and the others are just life and health. And I think I'm using 1 to resist cap. Oh, 2 of them to resist cap right now. But life and life, life and life. That's what I would have on those 4 if they were all geared properly. So that's how I'm running it. More good news on this build is just because I'm using damned doesn't mean you have to. All of these skills have support to go ignite or bleed or even like physical crit or necrotic crit. They can all do all versions of that, and all these synergies work no matter which version of that you're doing. It is only like your passive nodes and whatnot that would change. All these skill interactions will work with any version of it you like, and it's super easy to respec in here. So coming into passives real quick, we'll touch on the important things, or at least the things I think are important. For starters, most of these points here, very, very important. I would leave the int and vitality until the end, to be honest, which is an odd take. But everything else in here is so important, and these are just raw stats. Raw stats are good. They do give us more ward retention. They do give us more damage, but everything else in here seems like functionally more important. This is just an entirely too much ward for 6 points. We can't give that up. We want this less damage taken node. We want this more armor per cursed target node. Huge. The only damned The only overload we're taking is damned overload because I am hard focused on damned. One thing worth noting, this node, way more important than it looks, it is the only increased duration to damned we have in the entire build. And so far, the only increased duration to damned I have even seen. And as anyone who's ever done poison in PoE will tell you, duration is more damage. The first time you get it, that's just a more multiplier because it stacks infinitely and it can never, you can never like have too many of them. 30% duration is 30% more damage the first time you get it. So that's actually huge. We've got this to put on Witchfire. Witchfire does quite a bit of its damage as well. I'm a little questioning whether I need 5 points in here or not. It could very well be that just having 1 is more than enough. Honestly, I don't know. 4 points in here instead of 5 or 3 was done from a lot of testing from me. 4 points in here has given me basically 100% uptime throughout all of my echoes and stuff. So I didn't really feel a need for the 5th point. It would be 10% more effective haste, but I'm really passive starved, so I didn't want to waste extras. This node is just fantastic for survivability. I just don't like dying, so it gives me a giant chunk of ward anytime I run out of ward and then go below 35% life. It'll give me like 15, 20,000 ward in this one big chunk just to save me, almost like a cheat death mechanic. It's great. And then these nodes I would put in basically last. So really early, I put in this 10 int, and then I spent nothing else here until I had done all of these. And where I went with that is I put in 5 in here to get a little bit of spell leech in the higher corruption things. And when I say higher, all of mine have been at about 280 to 300 the last few days. That's where I am. A little bit of recovery from leech is very nice. We took 60% increased damage, and that got us out here where I'm only at 6 out of 8 right now. I've got 2 more levels to go. That's going to get me all that int. Int is huge. We do want it. That's my whole build. Again, I do not know if this is the most efficient thing in the world. All I know is it is automated, it is smooth, and it is damned fun. I'm sorry, I had to. So that's it. That's everything. The one other thing I guess that I kind of forgot about is I'm wearing this right now just because of how it rolled. That 88% increased damage was pretty big. I do think this is easily replaceable. This is not a unique you need. Very good to start with, but definitely you could replace it with just a rare. It would be fine. So yeah, only one unique that I think is important enough to matter. Everything else comes off the floor. Very easy to play, very smooth, very automated, right up my alley. That is all I have. I will see everybody next time. Goodbye.